Hi, everybody. Normally, I would do like a book thing today, monsters, something, all right, out of one of the resources I have to just share with you guys all the wonderful stuff that's out there. But I've been, every so often, I research stuff for fun. I study stuff just on my own. Sometimes I'm reading actual scientific research papers, stuff like that. Sometimes I'm just looking up info. What's new, right? Um, And this week, my research thing, besides role playing games, has been some archaeological stuff, and specifically ancient scrolls and manuscripts. I got a soft spot for that stuff. Um, Tablets, you know, old writings. So I came across some not well known, for lack of a better term, I'm just going to call them a type of Dead Sea Scrolls. They were scrolls that were found in a jar or, in a cave, wrapped up with black gooey stuff and linen, just like the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they were immediately declared forgeries. Well, same time period that some of the cave art, by the way, was in Europe was being declared forgeries based on the same logic. It's too well preserved. That could never survive. And even though on the back channel letters of in academia, where they were like, I think these are real, you know, because there was so much pressure from people above those people, they just declared them forgeries. Um, but it got me thinking the state of the scrolls, the state of like the Dead Sea Scrolls or papyruses that they've found or other books. Um, what would be the state of stuff you find in a dungeon? I mean, unless you know what you're looking for, it might look like trash, particularly scrolls that have been down in a dungeon for a while. So like with the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Moses Scrolls, that's what I'm going to call them. And it's a double entendre actually. The Shaparo Scrolls is what they called it. People like they're forgeries, but we don't know that. We really don't know that. What they had available for scientific reasoning and testing in the 1800s, when they were presented, um, and everyone's natural biases. Um, and they do have transcriptions, which would be it's just not stuff somebody would write who was forging. I'm sorry. They would not write what was written in them. Um, it would be way easier to make it match uh, um, the 10th century Torah versus deviating from it, in which we know like the Dead Sea Scrolls do, and they're not fake. So these scrolls that were found, they were all covered with gooey substance. They were strips of leather. Nobody could read them. They were all black, and they had linen, and then they had this gooey stuff over the top of them. Dead Sea Scrolls were the same way. Now, the gooey bitumen stuff, there's some argument now about what that might have been. It actually may be decaying outer covering, and then the linen was like the interior covering. Anyway, when they found these scrolls, they thought they were mummy wrappings. And they threw them to a side, but, the Bedouin, but one tribal member picked him up and said, you know what, I'm just going to throw this tin here and keep it. I don't know what this is. And then all these good things started happening. And and then eventually they sold him to this dude, who then took him to Europe to get other people's opinion and to read these things, because the leather stained. They had to wipe alcohol on it, and it's like invisible ink, and just for a few moments you can see the letters, right? And then they're gone, right? but they're still there. And it's Paleo Hebrew, and the text is quite interesting. Has the for those who don't know, there's a missing 10th commandment in the Bible. um, and they've created a 10th depending on different traditions. They either split the first or they like split, I think it's the last, to make 10. Depends on whose Torah and whose Old Testament Bible you're reading, how they do that. This actually has the 10th commandment. And there's more. The missing blessings are in there and all this stuff. So there's missing material that everybody knows is missing, and they've written about it, like the rabbis have written about it, various church people have written about it, and it's there. But, no one wanted to authenticate them, just like they destroyed the guy's life who found the cave paintings in Spain. Those ancient, primitive, unevolved humans could not have done that. That was the argument. Academia was very not open-minded. It's still not open-minded. Be very closed in its thinking. I observed when I was taking archaeology classes back in the day, and anthropology classes. And so what would you find in a dungeon is what I'm getting at. What condition would this stuff be in? I'm going to argue that, in the past, I've done it like everybody else. You find the scroll of healing, Well, no, you find a scroll. You need to take that scroll back. It's not in pristine condition. It's damaged. You're going to have to do research as the magic user. This is me now. This is my thinking now. Was that scroll protected at all from the elements of the dungeon? Oh yeah, and what if your players are the kind who kill everything and blast everything? Is that magical scroll in the corner of the room while they're going after, I don't know, 10 orcs or whatever, an ogre, going to survive what the magic user's doing or the players are doing when they're throwing flasks of oil out there and trying to catch things on fire? And these are things you need to think about, and that includes other items. What condition are they in? Are people going to recognize what they're looking at, or are they just going to be like, oh, it's all rubbish? So are the scrolls protected? Are they in a case? Is a case worth something? These are some things you need to think about, in my opinion. Now, when you look at manuscripts, one of the reasons they're finding missing books, books we read about that existed, and now they're finding chunks of them. They're like, well, why? How is that happening? Well, now we can take manuscripts that are in libraries of ancient churches and stuff, and that are parchment, which is animal skin, for those of you who don't know, and we can put them underneath really high resolution technology we have and take pictures. And what's happening is sometimes they're reused books. All right, we don't write in that language anymore. And, that was some pagan dude wrote that, right? So then what they did is they would go in and they'd scrape a layer of the skin off of each of the pages, because books were expensive. Okay, then they'd write over it all. So when they've gone in to take pictures of these of the book they think they only have one book, and preserve it. And so they're taking these really high resolution, then they're discovering that they've got a second book underneath. And the technology is good enough now that they can know what the second book said, which was the original book. The second book's the one that's on top, which is actually kind of cool. So they're finding some lost books that we thought were gone forever in antiquity. But books come in a variety of materials: leather, wood, bamboo, palm, um, uh, clay tablets, stone, you know, things are plastered on walls that can really get destroyed easily. Um, Papyrus, paper. All right, so scrolls, manuscripts. I've even heard of, I think, silk. Things come in and be embroidered. I mean, there's like a whole list of ways that information can be retained. So when you're thinking about your magical scrolls or your religious scrolls that equal a magical effect in your game, or maybe you're just running a good old fashioned Indiana Jones style game where they're out to go find the ancient thing, right? And there is no really magic associated with it. They're out there tomb raiding away, right? Um, uh, you need to think about the conditioning of these things. A lot of things have to be cleaned up, reconditioned. Somebody has to know what they're looking at. Just because you find a pile of silver, what condition is the silver in? Now, we make it easy for the most part, but that is something to legit think about. Yeah, you find a pile of silver coins, they're kind of all fused together. How are you going to move that? Like, you got to take it back and do something to it. You got to clean it up somehow. Suddenly, you remember that mend spell suddenly that mend spell might be very important in the treasure retrieving. Also, if you make it like, okay, you find the text, the missing text that you're looking for in, the dungeon of whatever, the tomb of so and so. That was the hook, was to go get this thing, but it's in bad shape. You gotta take it back to the town. The magic user, the cleric, whoever, is going to have to research it, try to figure it out before they can put it in their prayer book, before they can, they're gonna have to do something depending on what it's for. So that's a real thing. Also, artifacts. In the ancient world, artifacts were the thing. Like if you get into reading like travel guides, I know you guys are going to have, the ancient Greeks had travel guides. The ancient people had travel guides. And those travel guides are way interesting for people wanting to research stuff. And they were often overlooked. They've been translated. And it's actually how a couple people have been able to find dinosaurs. Because the travel guides tell you where to go to look at monster bones, or where to go find other prehistoric animals. That's the field where the giants died. And, they think they're all cyclops giants had a war or something, and what they are is they're mastodons. Or where the dragon bones are, and stuff like that. So this is real stuff, and I've even seen some Greek art where it's obvious the monster head in the Greek art was actually a fossil head, and that was supposed to be the head of the monster that some hero slayed, and I forget which one and what monster, but I saw the ancient vase, and that head was supposed to be in some temple somewhere. That was the thing, like, okay, just, how like in medieval Europe, the big thing was all the churches looking for relics and getting relics of saints and, whoever, right? Whoever they thought was whoop-dee, right? And all of them had relics. Someone's bone, vial of blood, piece of cloth, whatever, right? A little stick. How many pieces of the cross are out there, right? But all that aside, that happened in the ancient world as well. So when you're um, doing your little chapels and your little shrines and all that, you should be asking yourself, well, why do people go to that temple? Why is there a shrine there? What makes that thing special? Because believe it or not, go over to the Middle East. There are places you can go that if you know where you're going, there used to be a synagogue there, a temple there, a shrine there, a church there. There might still be a church there, you know, and that has been built around something special. And that's an important thing to remember. This is really how it should be in a fantasy setting, that if you have a shrine, there's a reason for that shrine, not just because someone stuck a statue there. There should actually be some kind of lore that's interesting. It doesn't have to be whoop-de. It just needs to be interesting. You know, you could have a running gag through the whole game. You like every time, you know, every third village, it's the femur bone of Saint, you know, Tibius, right? every every third village has a chapel with a, you know, or every third city, you know, and you're like, well, how many legs did Saint Tibius have? You know, you're right. Which one's the real one? No one knows, right? But you know, retrieving relics, finding sacred places, retrieving sacred text, that should be something a cleric wants to do. For the magic users, it's the same thing. Finding that ancient magic, finding ancient sources of magic, tracking down ancient magical tomes and spells that they know are out there. But when they get the thing, they may not be able to use it right away. They may need to go back to home base, wherever that is, and get that thing cleaned up. Or they may have to hand it over to somebody else. Right? Are your wizards all free agents just running amok? Or do they have masters? Do they have a school? And if they go against the school, are they going to be in trouble? The druids, are they just running amok? Or is there a druid college? Or a druid circle, grove, whatever, where there's multiple druids and they're beholden to do what they need to do. Same with the regular clerics. What's their religion want? Is it going to create a conflict? Like, are there multiple denominations and everybody wants that thing? And does that thing support one denomination or another denomination? These are good plot points, and also a good way to spend your PC's money. Oh, curses too. So the Mummy curse, right? We've all seen the Mummy films. The curse of Tutankhamun. That's part of modern day lore, right? Curses. When you disturb tombs. And, you know, when you find out that, like, they disturb all these tombs in certain places to get rock, and they literally, like, destroyed tombs. I don't know, man. Some bad juju there, right? So, in real life. So, and you wonder how many ancient artifacts were destroyed of interest that were in those tombs, especially when you know how tombs are set up in certain areas. So they're out there tomb raiding, right? I mean, that's literally, in some cases, what PCs are doing. You know, why would you go into the catacombs? To get things off of dead people. Why would you go into a heavily trapped tomb? Well, at some point, there should be some kind of curse, some kind of thing that magically they're going to have to protect themselves from, or they're going to have some kind of consequence. I mean, put that stuff back. If it's not in your game, put it in there. Even if you're doing a more realistic 1920s game. I'm just saying, put that scary stuff back in there besides just, skeletons coming alive or something. Um, make the Curse of the Mummy a lot more like the movies where they think they robbed the tomb successfully and then all this stuff starts happening later. Also, depending on your time period, your culture, what you're borrowing from where to make your civilizations and whatnot. Take it like ancient Sumeria. They had professional ghost hunters. Guys want to know why? They were burying their dead in the walls of their homes in the city. Finding untake properly buried people suddenly made you responsible for figuring out how to take care of them and making their spirits happy, or else bad stuff could happen to you. These are all things you should think about in your games. It's not, on the treasure hunting and the getting the goodies. It shouldn't be like, yes, the coins are in perfect shape. Yes, the everything I find is in perfect shape, and there's no possible annoyed ghost, or the ghost of a dead wizard. How cool would that be? Right? Another thing, when you're delving into these places, if they are highly populated, the monster apartment complex underground, right? Or in the cave walls, which you could have a cave society. That there's nothing wrong with that. Then they need to have all the supports that you should have. I've got a couple old modules, and when I started going through and reading them and asking myself questions like, what's going on here? What's going on there is they have the bare bones of an underground civilization spelled out in this tomb. The people that are living there. And there's even a wizard who's got a magic shop set up. And then in the follow-up module, one area is practically a whole town. It really is a whole town. Temple, an inn, a library. I'm not kidding. They have a whole town. That level of that dungeon, if the players manage to make allies instead of just enemies of everybody, suddenly becomes a home base. But they're going to have to get along with less than pleasant peoples. Less than pleasant sentient monsters and NPCs, but it's not undoable. And those are both pretty old modules. And the setting too, when you start poking around it, there's a lot of interesting things in it. It's the first one anybody ever tried to put out to the public, and there's more in it than meets the eye. Everyone's like, it's bare bones, but have you actually, nobody actually thinks about what's actually in it. I should do the first module and sit there and discuss it in detail. But what you're looking at when you're placing these treasures, when you're describing them, and why are you saying it's a 7,000 experience point, blah blah blah. I know modern D&D doesn't award experience points for certain things, but it should. And if you're clever, depending on which little tweaking you go with, because most of us tweak stuff, if there's a CR rating, a target number, there's often CR ratings for stuff. You should be able to figure out experience, so that it's not just killing monsters, but circumventing a trap, things like that. Finding the treasure. You know, you should be able to do it. I really need to sit down and do like how to do 5e different, but still have it be 5e. But yeah, I'm just doing other stuff right now. But I'm just saying, think about what conditioning is. Go look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. Go look up on, you know, what condition manuscripts are often in when they find them. How fragile some of the stuff is, and it's therefore when one of our scribey kind of people finds something like that, you really need to emphasize how messed up and fragile and difficult or impossible it is to read in its current state. Like they're going to have to take it home and cast spells on it and call the local alchemist for help, and you know the scribes that are practiced in magical scribe work. I mean, it should be a to-do, and the security on it, all that stuff should be. It shouldn't just be like, oh yeah, there's a million of these things everywhere. That's just what I was thinking, and in studying this particular, you know, getting caught up on these particular lost scrolls, because now they're lost. You know, they found them, they had them. It sounds like they got ripped off, sold from surviving family members who were in another country. And so, you know, when the dude who had them died in Europe, and he may have been murdered even, and they know when they were seen last, and they know who had them last. So they're trying to hunt them down. And they know that one strip, they're pretty sure, based on their trail, is in one country, and the rest were in England. So, yeah, Germany and England, they're trying to, possibly Amsterdam too. You know, and hopefully they made it through 2 world wars. That's all I can say. You know, they've got some of it transcribed, but now with modern technology, they could really do these scrolls justice. So it's a cultural loss that people were that ignorant, that pig-headed. It wasn't just a matter of being skeptical. It was a matter of simply not believing something could survive, so just calling it a fraud. And then that thing was then they tried to say that about the Dead Sea Scrolls, that we now know they're authentic. They're not a fraud. So you know, and now everybody wants, you know is researching what's what, you know. And now they've found caches in some places of manuscripts that were supposed to be destroyed, that were scrolls, you know, holy scrolls that weren't. There's nobody got around to doing it, because there's like a whole process you go through when a holy text wears out. So they have those to go back and look at now, which is cool. And it's changing a lot of assumptions about what's legit and what isn't. And there was more than one version of things floating around, and yeah. So that's good for the researchers. A bit upsetting for some denominations of various things, but they'll get over it. You know, accept or reject, that's totally up to everybody in the modern society, one way or another, right? So, but the fact that this stuff's being found, that books we thought were gone forever are being found, and they're not forgeries. So, that's a good thing. But there will always be a push to suppress stuff that's doesn't support modern sensibilities on something. Let's put it that way. Whatever that is, whether it's arrowheads, or ancient scrolls. Uh, but I think in time, all of it comes around. Tablets, clay tablets, writings on walls, where you can read so far down and then part of it's missing, stuff like that. You should really consider that stuff in your settings, where they're getting partial clues and partial information. Maybe the mage will have to go to like 3 different places to get what they think is the complete spell put together. Like, they heard in the lore that 3 different tablets were set up, or maybe the cleric that had the ancient laws of so and so, or the ancient explanation of how magic works, right, by so and so, and that these 3, they're identical, but they were put in different places. All right, so they go to the first place, and only parts are surviving, or there used to be one here, but it's been destroyed. But there's a copy in the library of that town, and so on. So, and they don't all have to completely match. Just because the lore says they do doesn't mean they have to. And then your player has to research it and figure out, using some kind of game mechanic, whether they researched it right, and then what they want to do works or doesn't work. Or works kinda. Right? That could make the new magic, the new spell, the new prayer work funny, right? If they didn't quite get it right. I'm just putting that out there. So I gotta go. It's a busy day. Everyone have a good one. Bye. A like, subscribe, comment.